Minister's dictum today that by the end of the month, federal workers, those in the transportation field, need to be vaccinated or they're going to be ordered home without pay. Is that going to help vaccination efforts?
Oh, that's a loaded question. What it's going to help, I think, especially in transportation, is encourage people who are hesitant to use transportation because no one wants to run the risk of being exposed once they've taken precautions themselves. So I think that's what it's most about, is assuaging the fears of other people. Will this encourage vaccination uptake amongst federal employees? Yeah, absolutely it will. Will it do so to a large extent? Who knows? There are always going to be some holdouts. And I don't know how to reach that last nugget of intractable individuals who are opposed to vaccination.
Where are you on the booster shot scale here as far as what needs to happen now and what needs to happen in the weeks and months ahead?
I think we're talking third boosters, obviously. I think for the
Yes.
immunocompromised and the very elderly, it needs to happen soon. For everybody else, I don't see it as a priority. And the reason for that is the intention here is to prevent hospitalization and death, and all the vaccines do that just fine. Vaccines are always going to diminish in the ability to produce antibodies after a few months. But we have these things called B cells that have a memory associated with them. And sometime in the future, when you're exposed to the virus again, your body can produce antibodies. That's the immunological theory. So there's every expectation that that other arm of the immune system will kick in future exposure. So I don't think there's a rush right now for third boosters for everybody else. The rush should be on getting first and second shots for the rest of the world.
And Raywat, we were talking about, those holdouts and that small percentage of people who simply won't get vaccinated. That kind of, for me at least, recalls what when we were having discussions about herd immunity. And I recall, several months ago, people were saying we need 70%. We've seen in Alberta, for instance, where almost 3/4 of the population is fully vaccinated, and they are dealing with quite a crisis right now. So obviously that 70% number kind of goes out the window. Have we kind of given up on this idea of herd immunity, or do we still have a number in mind to try and reach?
It's a good question. Herd immunity has always been poorly understood, even by the supposed experts. And the problem is, when doing herd immunity calculations, we're assuming immunity is evenly distributed across the population. Even if we're above 95% immunity, where that 5% resides is important. We're never going to have continuous, perfect distribution of immunity. So we're likely dip in and out of herd immunity over time and over geographies because the unvaccinated tend to be linked geographically and socially. That's why these clusters happen. Now, as to the question of can we still have the herd immunity conversation, we can. And that depends on the vaccine effectiveness and how transmissible the virus is. And based upon current estimates, back of the envelope calculations suggest we need over 90% of the population to be immunized. That means vaccinated or having recovered from the disease. So we'll get there eventually. It may take years, not months, though.
Well, and you mentioned that 90% number. I just think in Manitoba right now, I believe it's about 82 or 83% of the population that's fully vaccinated. But we still have, I think it's 130 or 140,000 children between the ages of 5 and 11 that still don't qualify for the shot. And likely a huge chunk of those will end up getting that. So when you mentioned that 90% number, roughly, Raywat, for me anyway, from a Manitoba perspective, that is pretty positive because even though a chunk of the population, a big chunk of the population is not eligible to get it, we are working our way there. Like to me, I see that herd immunity coming sooner rather than later, at least from where I'm sitting in this province.
Yeah, what's going to happen likely is we'll have sufficient immunity, especially in Manitoba, given the numbers you quoted, that the endemic levels will be so low that it won't pose a challenge to our healthcare system or to most of us thinking about the disease on a day-to-day basis. If we look at Portugal, for example, Portugal has, over 95%, 98% of their eligible population vaccinated. There's no one left for them to vaccinate legally. And as a result, they're casting aside all of their precautions because they've done what they can. And they're unlikely to see any more challenges to the healthcare system. We can get there as well. Now, whether or not this will mean eliminating the disease from inside our borders, that's probably unlikely at this point. But it will probably mean such exquisite control of the disease that we won't care about it.
Raywat Deonandan with us on 680 CJOB from the University of Ottawa. What's your advice for Thanksgiving and family get-togethers?
Well, if you can do it outdoors, do it outdoors. If you can keep it small, keep it small. If you can only associate with vaccinated people, do so. Obviously, kids under 12 in most provinces aren't able to be vaccinated, so you got to take precautions where you can. If you got an immunocompromised person in your family, maybe don't socialize. So you do all the things you've been doing up until this point, but now we throw in the vaccination option. And as well, if you got money and you can invest in things like HEPA filters for your home, air purifiers, do that. Improve ventilation. That's the best way to minimize the probability of spread.
Appreciate the time. Thanks so very much, Raywat.
Thank you.
Raywat Deonandan from the University of Ottawa.